Well, glad everyone could join us
Yeah.
today. As Chris mentioned, today's webinar is really going to be focused on the recent announcement on La Plata and the significance of those drill results. Starting out here with the cover slide, new image taken last year at La Plata, looking across the alteration that you see, associated with the Allard mineral resource area and surrounds. Pretty spectacular image. So let's go ahead and, Scott, we will be making forward-looking statements, and we do advise that investors take a look at our disclosure, particularly in our quarterly financials, in terms of highlighting some of the risks. So just by way of a bit of background, we started putting together the Metallic group of companies, which is an umbrella of three public companies: Metallic Minerals, Stillwater Critical Minerals, and Granite Creek Copper, back in 2016, kind of where we sensed we were nearing the bottom of this most recent commodity cycle. These are great opportunities for picking up assets and making acquisitions. They can be challenging times for companies to raise money, but that opportunity to be able to start assembling something for this new commodity cycle that's unfolding in front of us was something that we were pretty excited about. So bringing together a team of explorationists with deep backgrounds with many of the majors that we'll talk a bit about in terms of background. Scott and I were part of the original co-founders at Nova Gold, and many of the other members of the team also have a Nova Gold background. We really focused on areas where we saw the opportunity to pick up projects that would be of the scale that ultimately a major would be interested in, a place where we could make discoveries, apply new exploration models, and bring new technology, artificial intelligence, and new technology stuff, projects that haven't seen exploration in some cases for decades. And our model for value creation is really modeled after the approach we took at Nova Gold, where through strategic acquisitions at the bottom of the metal price cycles, we were able to take assets that either already had a resource or were on the verge of a resource and be able to really grow value in what we see as one of the periods where the maximum value can kind of be created for investors on a project. So for instance, looking at the three assets that sat in Nova Gold, we picked up Donlin Creek at the bottom of the gold price cycle. We grew that resource quite quickly, fourfold growth. Starting out as a micro cap company, smaller than Metallic Minerals today, that asset trades in the open marketplace under Nova Gold at an over $3 billion market cap. So just tremendous value creation. And that's now a 50-50 JV with Barrick and Nova Gold. We picked up the Galore asset from Rio Tinto at the bottom of the copper market cycle, 2002, 2003. And again, saw the opportunity to grow a historic resource into what is today one of the largest undeveloped copper, gold, silver systems. It's an alkalic porphyry, very similar to our La Plata project that we'll be talking about extensively here. So that's now 50-50 owned by Newmont and Teck. And that value of that asset was around $1 billion in terms of those purchases. And then the last asset that we brought into the portfolio, again at the bottom of the zinc and copper cycle, was the Ambler asset, again picking this up from Rio Tinto and growing it dramatically. And that now underpins the Trilogy Metals spin out that became a separate asset. And again, just really creating massive value. So looking at the Metallic group today in terms of the similarities with what we've done, we've managed to pick up 4 assets that we believe have the potential to be tier 1 assets, to be something that a major mining company is going to be interested in, and really focus on Metallic Minerals in 2016, the initial acquisitions through about 2018, moving to a first resource that we'll be talking about. We see the potential. This district is a 1 billion ounce plus district that's just underexplored, has geologic similarities with the Coeur d'Alene district, and we think there's a lot of value yet to be daylighted in our half of the Keno district. 2017, sister company Stillwater Critical Minerals acquired the Lower Stillwater complex. We're applying a bulk tonnage flat reef style model there, and just published an updated resource on that project. Carmax Copper under Granite Creek Copper picked up this asset in 2018, the Southern District and the Minto Carmax District. This is historically one of the highest grade open pit copper mines. We've defined a resource, grown that resource, and just published a PEA on that project in January, demonstrating a robust project that still has lots of room to grow and for upside. And then lastly, in late 2019, Metallic Minerals picked up the La Plata asset in part because of the similarities that we saw at Galore Creek with La Plata and the geology. And the opportunity we see here is a fantastic asset. It is on that end of the continuum for porphyry systems. It's high precious metals, as we've seen in some of the recent drill results. And the opportunity we see here is potentially something that could have the scale and value of a Galore Creek type system with further work. So, as we look out at the landscape of junior exploration development stage companies, we are positioned in that sweet spot of rapid resource growth. And as demonstrated in the model of NovaGold, by advancing these through resource expansion and then de-risking through the various engineering stages, this is really where tremendous shareholder value can be created. And what we say to investors is look out over the next couple of years on the backdrop of even flat metal prices. We think there's a tremendous amount of value to be created as we demonstrate the scale of the resource on these projects and advance them and de-risk them through the engineering phases towards production. So looking at the recent markets, this is a great slide from the Crescat team from their January, and I think it's also in their February newsletter, just highlighting this recent commodity bottom cycle. You can see here the first low looking at dollar traded volume in the venture TSX Venture Index, which is really made up of a number of it's dominated by the junior explorer developers. And you can see the first bottom was in 2016, the second one in 2020, and then we're basically right now playing out that third low. The last 2 years have been incredibly challenging, as many of you know, in the junior resource space, and we've seen a consolidation in the junior space over that last 2 years. We believe that consolidation may be, finishing here, and that we're seeing early signs with response to significant news that the market is starting to pay attention. And the reality in our space is the major mining companies need to acquire production by acquiring juniors that have high quality resources and deposits in order to replace their mining production and to show a growth in their production profiles. So the junior space is incredibly important. And what we see are these cycles of recognition of value in the explorer developers over time. And right now we're at a low part of the cycle, which means a great opportunity for investors looking at high quality names in the resource space. Okay, so just kind of summarizing, what's our key approach to creating value using that kind of NovaGold approach? It was recognizing the value at Keno and La Plata and being able to take those to resources, grow those resources, and de-risk them over time. And with that, our objective is to take an investor dollar and hopefully turn that into $3, $4, or $10 in the future through that successful exploration process. How do we think we're going to be able to do that? Well, we've assembled a team of explorationists with a track record of discovery. This team, I'm proud to say, in its work with the majors and some of the leading exploration development stage companies in the industry, has over a half a dozen major discoveries in North America, including Donlin Creek, Galore Creek, and at Wellgreen and others. And so this is a team that's demonstrated the ability to recognize that value, grow it, and take these assets through an advanced development stage. Many of us started out with the majors such as Placerville and Barrick. We also have folks that were at Kinross, Trilogy Metals, as mentioned earlier, and recently the addition of a number of the members of the Ivanhoe Mines team to the group, which add real depth. So we really have a set of team leaders as shown here on the slide with the experience, to be able to recognize and explore these assets. And it's exciting to be working with this group of professionals. I also just mentioned that, part of our work that Scott and I did at Nova Gold very early before ESG was popular was really an ESG focused effort, developing relationships with the Alaska First Nations, which we call Native corporations, and the First Nations around the Galore asset. This is something we've been doing since day one. It's something that we really put focus on, is developing those relationships with the local communities and the Indigenous groups. And so this is an important part of the way we work every day. You can see here we've got a strong back office support team on the corporate side that supports all three companies. And we've also got a strong team that's focused on those important environmental, social governance components. I'll also mention that we're proud to be working with a series of industry partners in and around, particularly the recent La Plata addition by the USGS and the Colorado Geologic Survey. They've identified the La Plata mining district as an area with significant potential for critical mineral resource development. They're going to be investing something on the order of $300,000 over the next couple of years towards mapping and sampling. And we have had a similar relationship at Stillwater with the USGS, so we look forward to the opportunity to potentially collaborate with these groups. And we think it's a real vindication of the caliber and recognition by the US government that this area has this kind of potential. In addition, over the last couple of years, we've been working with Goldspot, using some of their machine learning and artificial intelligence technology to take these data-rich projects that have these decades of information and to be able to develop vectors and targets from that information that may streamline and make us more efficient in terms of the pace of discovery and the ability to drill holes like we reported this week. So with that, Scott, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Greg. I appreciate that. Nice update there. My focus in this presentation is to really cover our La Plata project in some detail, but I do want to talk about our other key assets. And just as a reminder, Metallic Minerals is a precious and base metal exploration and development company, growth stage company with key assets that are all in North America. So the first of those key assets that I'll mention is our Keno Silver Project, which is a high-grade silver lead zinc project in the center part of the Yukon territories in northern Canada. It's a 100% owned project next door to Hecla, who's the third largest primary silver producer in the world. And it's 171 square kilometers, so a very sizable project next door to Hecla. Hecla has the largest property package. This is the second largest property package in the district. And historically, over 300 million ounces of silver produced. We're focusing right now on working on developing an inaugural resource at over 5 of the target areas out of the 40 target areas that we've identified on the project. So we're looking to have that news on an inaugural resource sometime in 2023, so stay tuned for that. Our La Plata project, which I'll go over in a little bit more detail, is primarily a silver, gold resource stage project, but we do have precious metals rich porphyry system, and we're working on understanding a bit more about the precious metals, gold, platinum, palladium content, and we'll talk about that with our drill results. But in April of 2022, we announced our inaugural resource on the backs of work that was done by the majors, with nearly a 1 billion pound copper equivalent resource that includes 15 million ounces of silver. Our third key asset is really the little engine that could, perhaps the big engine that could, as a production, an alluvial production royalty portfolio. We have recently announced a new agreement with Little Flake Mining and Parker Schnabel, who you may know from the hit show on the Discovery Channel called Gold Rush. Parker is a major operator expects to mine somewhere between 5,000 and 10,000 ounces this year on this project, and we maintain a 10 to 15% royalty on that project, on that production, which may really underpins income for the company, for Metallic Minerals, that will help us through the bad times and help supplement exploration in the good times, or perhaps with the ability to add more operators, provide exploration funding as we go forward. So focusing on our La Plata project, it is in the southwest corner of Colorado in the United States. It exists within the Colorado Mineral Belt, which has had significant historic production, over 50 million ounces of silver, nearly 500 million ounces, 50 million ounces of gold, 500 million ounces of silver, and over 1.5 billion pounds of moly. And there are some significant operators in the Colorado Mineral Belt, which is really defined by these lineaments, continental scale structures of gravity and magnetics, defined by the United States Geological Survey, that define these trends, that show, that intersect in the La Plata area. Newmont is currently mining at their Cripple Creek operation, where they've got 30 million ounce gold deposit. Hecla is actively exploring in the Creed district in southwestern Colorado, and Freeport-McMoRan has 2 significant moly assets as well in the Colorado Mineral Belt. Zooming in a little bit more detail into southwest Colorado, I think it's important to note that we also have a number of exploration companies in the region that include Alianza, Allied Copper, and and some active mines as well, including Lisbon Valley Copper Mine, which has nearly 1 billion pounds of copper in resources and is currently in operation. The southwest Colorado is also a bastion for significant production out of the San Juan gold fields, where polymetallic deposits were developed historically. This is an active region with a long history of mining and exploration, and we're excited to have our La Plata project there to work within the district. This is a schematic cross-section showing the deposit, which is a precious metals-rich porphyry and associated high-grade epithermal system. Historically, silver and gold and telluride veins were found in the 1700s by Spanish explorers. Those deposits, those vein deposits, were developed by mom and pop operators and small prospectors in the 1800s through the early 1940s, when the mines were shut down due to the War Powers Act in the United States. The majors, Rio Tinto and Freeport-McMoRan, came back into the district in the 50s and focused on the porphyry exploration potential in the heart of the district, and completed 54 holes for around 15,000 meters of exploration, defining an initial deposit of copper and silver. In the last 2 years, Metallic Minerals has drilled a couple of holes, with the results being our most recent 2 holes drilled in 2022. I want to talk about more specifically, but based on the work that was done historically by Rio and Freeport-McMoRan, we were able to announce this inaugural 43-101 compliant resource of nearly 1 billion pounds. I think it's important to note that the work that Rio and Freeport did was in a district that had a fairly fractured land package, and through the price cycles of copper and the other precious metals and base metals, that they stopped exploration on the project essentially in the 70s and held on to it until the low price cycle in the market in around 2000, and offloaded it to 2 astute investors who saw value in this project, recognized that our team, Greg and I, with our experience at Nova Gold and the similarity of this deposit to our Galore Creek project in British Columbia, were the right operators to take this project forward and extract the value that we know we can from this deposit, from this target. So essentially, the deposit has not seen exploration within the last 50 years. We acquired it in 2019, have been very systematic about the exploration work that we've done, including confirmation work in the central resource area, which we call the Allard resource, that included underground resampling of the Allard tunnel and drilling of additional holes to confirm the resource grades, as well as completed very systematic exploration on the rest of the district, which has helped identify 16 additional porphyry centers that are potential copper deposits, copper, silver, gold, and PGE deposits. Speaking specifically on our 2022 drill program, we drilled 2 holes, LP 2204 and LP 2203. You're looking at a cross section through the main part of the Allard resource system. It demonstrates this knot of grade here in the Allard area. The Allard underground tunnel, which has been resampled, was driven in 1910, exists here. This hole, the last hole of our 2022 season, drilled 816 meters of continuous mineralization, grading at 0.41% copper equivalent recovered from surface and ending in mineralization as well. And we talk about the fact that the lower 500 meters of this hole ran 0.51% copper equivalent with significant precious and significant precious metal component. And the last 9 meters, almost 10 meters, ran over 3.5% copper equivalent with 1.5% copper, 12 grams per ton silver, and over 3 grams gold plus platinum group element credits there. Additionally, the very last sample ran 5% copper, 18 grams silver, and 5 grams gold plus PGE. So we ended in very high grades due to mechanical issues with the drill, and we look forward to expanding basically our drill pattern around that, because there is significant upside in terms of our ability to expand the resource and grow from the work that we've done. The 2 holes that were drilled, 2204 and 2203, were designed to expand the resource, and we think we've maximized our distance and our ability to actually grow tons from the hole that was drilled. And LP1, the previous best hole drilled on the project, also had essentially continuous copper mineralization from surface. And the bottom of these 2 holes is about 200 meters apart. The interesting thing about this hole is it did have somewhat similar copper values, slightly less, but it was drilled historically, and they did not sample for silver, gold, or PGE. So that represents a real potential upside for us. Historically, those holes, the majority of the holes in the deposit, were not tested for those elements. And so we see the opportunity as an enhancement of the existing resource to come back in and perhaps do a bit more work to prove that those elements exist in that deposit, and they do represent an upside enhancement for us in the immediate area of the known Allard resource. But with the idea that this hole has been drilled into new territory on the northern end, or the northern extension of the known deposit, and it's really open in all directions, as you can see by the arrows on the map. it really provides us with a new opportunity here. Essentially, what we see is that this hole has identified a new type of fluids, porphyry fluids, with elevated PGEs and precious metal components, along with the copper, that are giving us that ability to vector towards better grade as we have continued to explore in the area. So I just want to show you a plan map of the same sort of section. This is hole 2204 with our 816 meters of 0.41% copper equivalent recovered. And basically, it is dipping at very steeply at -65. It's underneath this hole, but it's been brought to the top so that you can see how the grade is shown or represented in the hole. And again, ended in mineralization. 2203, although there's less grade than there is in 2204, actually does have some grade that is working in our favor to help show that the cloud of mineralization around the deposit is, we're able to expand the outline of mineralization. But we have significant open directions, both south and north, and really all around the hole on the north end. And we'll be looking to enhance our drilling, and we're in the current stages of planning for our drilling in 2023 to enhance or expand the resource as we move forward. I have a quick video to represent what the deposit looks like in 3 dimensions. This video is a result of the modeling work that we've done on the project and includes this high resolution LiDAR image. We're going to be focusing on the central part of this, but you can see the existing road network on the map that allows us access to get to drill sites to continue to do the work on the project. And I will be stopping this at certain points. This is the 2 holes from 2023. This is 2020 LAP 2204. What's going to happen is we're going to rotate this to the side. So there might be a moment. It'll be nausea inducing. So stay with me on that. Oh, shoot. So right here, you're seeing essentially an outline or a shell of the 0.015 grade that is used to contain the resource calculation. The resource is well within here, but this is the confining shell to give you an idea of the shape and orientation of the mineralization. So we're swinging up into cross-sectional view. And I'll just show again 2203 and how it's influenced some of the grade to be captured within that hole. And 2204 showing here. Sorry. Not sure what happens there. We'll run through it again. So the golden grade shell is a 0.4 grade shell that did not exist prior to this drill hole. We're looking at I think a 0.3 and a 0.25 and the 0.15 grade shells here. And you can see, I mean, this is a cross-sectional slice that's very thick, looking to the south now through the deposit. And this is west, and this is east. And this is one of our other target areas out here. I should mention this is Copper Hill. And up on the top, we have what's known as the Copper Age. So this could be separate systems. They could be combined. They represent specific exploration targets as part of our project going forward. I do want to mention just very quickly, you can see LP1 here again, which is the historic best hole. Rotate around and see how 2203 exists in space. And additionally, this high-grade knot around the Allard tunnel with the various holes that were drilled from underground. So I'm going to run through this one more time so you get a good chance to sort of absorb it. I imagine we'll have this posted on our website at some point for future reference, but I know it can be a bit nauseating on the first pass. Switching from a plan view to a cross-sectional view looking to the north with the various grade shells identified and the new 0.4 grade shell in gold. Looking to the west and now looking to the north. Now looking to the south. And coming back to surface. Okay, so I also want to bring up this photograph, which is part of the systematic exploration that we've done on the project. We had a project in 2019 where we went out, we gathered all the publicly available spectral geology data, and this is one of those images from a Lancet, I believe, and I think it shows very specifically porphyry-related alteration with a very large footprint of over 10 square kilometers. And to give you an idea, the resource area and the most recent drilling is confined within this circle. So in the sense that we have additional targets at Copper Hill and Copper Age, that this whole ridgeline is prospective as part of the broader porphyry system. And there are additional areas outside of this as well that are prospective for new porphyry centers. So I think this is significant and very interesting and gives you a broad perspective of the scale of the system. Here's 1 kilometer for reference. Just stepping back and reviewing a little bit on our resource, 0.25% copper equivalent cutoff. There's over 115 million tons, grading 0.35% copper for 889 million pounds of copper. There's also 4 grams of silver with 15 million ounces of silver in the resource for a combined equivalent grade of 0.39 and 985 million pounds. I think we all believe firmly within a metallic that the new hole that's been drilled is going to be a significant increase to this resource, and we'll be working diligently to bring the new resource to the table in the coming months.
Maybe it's worth mentioning here, Scott, that back up on that for a second. So the resource currently only captures value from copper and silver. With our more recent sampling, both the underground sampling, resampling of historic holes, our 4 drill holes, we bring in the gold and the PGE component, and that's quite significant in this most recent drilling. So we see an opportunity just by adding those metals to increase value. And as Scott was saying, hole 4 basically is upgraded in an area that was an estimated area that didn't have drilling. It's now updated that part of the model. So we would expect the grade of the existing model to go up. And now the geometry has been increased with that step out hole moving away from what's in this resource tabulation. So a number of opportunities for enhanced value in the resource as part of this upcoming update that SGS Geoscience will be starting on right away with the completion of this drilling.
I think it's important to note too that with the concern in North America of identifying and capturing critical minerals for the green energy transition that we're moving towards, that the project is not just a copper project. And we've mentioned that in the results and shown and demonstrated that with these, up to 5 gram platinum palladium assays. But there is also gold in the epithermal systems that surround the project. There's gold in the porphyry resource. We are also seeing rare earth elements at anomalous levels, particularly in hole 2204, and we'll be working to kind of understand those distributions a bit more and see how we might be able to enhance our resource and our opportunities with those resources moving forward. Additionally, the epithermal systems that surround the porphyry center, we have 57 different veins that we've identified within our property boundaries that are epithermal gold silver telluride, and they did have elevated telluride, which is one of the listed critical minerals in the US. So we've got lots of different enhancement opportunities on the project that we're really excited about. I want to mention just very quickly our Keno Hill project, which is in the north central part of the Yukon territories. Again, the Yukon as a jurisdiction to do work in is one that is recognized by many of the majors as having a great geological endowment and a good structure for operating and doing exploration and those kinds of things. And so the Keno Silver Project here outside of Keno City within our district is Hecla, which we'll talk about in a second, but also Victoria Gold, which is currently operating the Eagle Mine. Not too far away is our alluvial gold project south of Dawson City, and a number of other majors in the district working on exploration or development projects. We exist roughly a very nice improved highway from the capital city of the Yukon territories, which is Whitehorse, and port cities of Skagway and Haines, where concentrate can be delivered to access smelters around the Pacific Rim. And there's good power existing, good infrastructure, which is just the way we like it. And it's a really good jurisdiction to do work in. The Keno Hill Mill, the Keno Mill complex in the center part of the Keno Hill district is currently being refurbished while Hecla is working to reestablish commercial operations scheduled for restart in Q3 of 2023. And if you haven't heard, Hecla completed the acquisition of Alexco Resources, which was our brownfield neighbor in the district, in September, and they've been putting significant amounts of resources, cash resources into upgrading this facility. And we think there's an opportunity for them and an interest by them to expand this operation as they work towards that production later this year. Hecla's operations will be the highest grade operations of their portfolio of producing mines. And as a company, they are the 3rd largest primary silver producer in the world. We know that they are interested in acquisitions in the Yukon. Their CEO has told me specifically, we see the Yukon as we see the Keno project as a beachhead for further activities in the Yukon. And so we're quite excited about that. A very robust project with a large IRR. They will need to be concerned about resources as they move forward. We have been working to identify those resources and represent a significant opportunity for them to continue to expand their operations, as well as other potential partners. The Keno Silver District is shown here on the map. Metallic Minerals owned property is shown in orange. Hecla's property is shown in green. We have several significant inholdings within the Hecla property. The district is 35 kilometers across, really represents the same geology across the district. We've seen significant production from these orange circles, which represent historic mines where over 220 million ounces of silver was produced. And the yellow circles are where over 120 million ounces of silver exists in resources held by Hecla. And then on our project, we've identified over 40 targets from basically grassroots stage up through advanced stage. And we're working right now to advance 5 of these that are shown within the red circles, the Caribou, Formo, Homestake, Nabob, and Fox targets, to a resource stage, an inaugural resource stage within 2023. Our Fox target is a new discovery in 2020 that we've most recently talked about in terms of public disclosure, where we're drilling a new style of mineralization. It's the same mineralogy, silver, lead, zinc, but these are sheeted veins, up to 170 meters wide. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Greg and let him finish up.
So maybe just a quick note on the Klondike Gold royalty and the work we've been doing over the last couple of years, and then we can briefly talk about the catalysts and working capital. Klondike Gold District. So the opportunity for NovaGold in the early days was to pick up a sand and gravel operation in Nome, Alaska that helped pay the bills and allowed NovaGold to go after assets like Donlin and Galore. So taking a similar approach, Metallic Minerals was able to pick up one of the largest unmined blocks of the Klondike. This is the eastern extension of the Klondike. We've got it fully permitted for mining, and this is the block that we've brought in the first major operator, which is Parker Schnabel's Little Flake Mining. So they're going to be drilling 400 drill holes this winter to help define the outline of the gold. They're going to be starting pre-production activities in the late spring and should be starting to produce by June. So pretty exciting in terms of the development. We have a number of other holdings, about a dozen other blocks with, I think, about half a dozen permits already in place, and we're working on additional permits. So over time, we have an opportunity to grow this to a fleet of operations, as many as 10 operators. As Scott mentioned early on, this is something that helps cover our operating costs to run as a public company and can contribute towards exploration. And there's opportunity here that with significant growth, and if these play out in the direction that many of these operations have downstream, this may be quite significant in terms of our annual exploration budgets. And really, it's a nice thing to have cash flow and production in a junior explorer developer. And I think it's a fairly unique situation for Metallic Minerals. So just touching briefly, we've already had a whole number of catalysts that have unfolded here over the last several months. We reported results at Keno from, as Scott mentioned earlier, the discovery at Keno East and the extension step-out drilling that we've been doing there. The high-grade results from Keno West, where our Formo target is moving towards a first resource as well. We still have results pending from the Caribou and Central Keno that we're working towards and expect that to be coming in the fairly near term. All of that will roll into a modeling process with SGS Geoscience for that inaugural resource, which we're targeting for sometime after mid-2023. We've just released the results from La Plata. Great to see the response for the market, recognizing that we're not just Keno. Keno's a fabulous flagship asset, but La Plata is adding value. And with these new discoveries, the potential to have a US-based copper, silver, gold PGE asset like La Plata, I think was starting to be recognized. So We'll be taking these results, working with SGS Geoscience to update the model and hope to deliver an updated La Plata resource in the near term. And then a couple of additional catalysts would be the start of production at the alluvials and first production royalties coming from there sometime mid-year, as well as our exploration programs, which, as Scott mentioned, the teams are actively at work looking at design of those programs to maximize those step out and expansion drill holes, both at La Plata and at Keno. So let's just touch briefly on the markets. As mentioned earlier, it has been a challenging time for the last couple of years for the juniors. The venture index is a great benchmark and it's been consolidated, but recently we've seen it hit its low, higher highs, higher lows. We're seeing the metals have rebounded. We've seen the larger producing companies rebound, and we're starting to see interest again in the explorer developer end of the section of the sector. We've got 150 million shares outstanding, trading in the mid 30-cent range. This week, that gives us roughly a $50 million market cap, really underpinning the value at Keno and La Plata. Management are key shareholders. We participate in financings and have done so all along. We have key investors such as Eric Sprott, funds like US Global, OTP, and others really demonstrate that the team and these investors see significant opportunity going forward. We've got about $2.5 million in cash. We're currently in discussions with warrant holders about potential early exercise and assessing our needs for the program, but we're in good shape for the planning and execution of the next steps, and we'll be looking to implement a significant exploration program in 2023 at La Plata and at Keno Hill. So just kind of ending, what really sets Metallic Minerals apart? We've got systems at La Plata and Keno that really demonstrate the key factors we look for. We look for scale and we look for grade. We've got world-class exploration models. Keno Hill, as we said earlier, we think is an analog to the world-class Coeur d'Alene district. La Plata has many similarities to Galore Creek, and in the region, other alkalic systems include Bingham Canyon and Cripple Creek for Newmont and Rio Tinto. We are already making new discoveries at both Keno and La Plata, and we think it's an exciting period ahead because we're at very early days on the resource expansion front for these assets. So wrap that up in terms of, what does Metallic Minerals offer the investor today? You're co-investing with a team that has a track record of discovery and advancement success that's added value. We've acquired these assets at the bottom of the metal price cycle on attractive terms, largely equity deals where those holders have taken shares in Metallic Minerals. So their upside comes from the company growing and developing those. We're permitted on these projects to be able to take the next steps and have a team that knows how to execute in terms of expansion. We're working in established brownfields districts that already have infrastructure. That means we can move more quickly and our costs to explore are lower. And we are highly leveraged to increases in metal prices, both through the expansion of these resources and the de-risking of these assets through advanced development stage. So all in all, this is an excellent time to be looking at the junior resource space in terms of market opportunity. And it's looking like the beginnings of a great 2023 for Metallic Minerals. So with that, Chris, you're back.
Yes.
Maybe we can see if there's some interesting questions to be able to go into here.
Yeah, very comprehensive. Hopefully my connectivity is a little better. I'm hardwired now. As I said, really comprehensive, and you're making my job with the Q&A part a little tough because I think everything was really kind of hit on, but I've taken a few notes to kind of consolidate a few of the questions that did come in. And I guess we'll start with whether so 2023 drilling plans at La Plata, maybe just to come back to that, will it focus on that resource area, an expansion of resource, or will some of these other signatures be looked at as far as the drill goes and the veins as well? Is that something that's potentially on tap for drilling this year?
Yeah, maybe I'll start, Scott, and you can jump in. Our focus this year is going to be definitely, we want to build on what this new discovery represents. So stepping out away from that, as Scott pointed out in a couple of slides, even some of the historic holes ended in mineralization in this new area. So we've got a number of offset holes that are going to add to the resource area and grow that and understand how wide is it, because we effectively didn't get through the higher grade portion. But the geologic indications with it getting stronger and stronger in depth in hole 4 would suggest that we're just getting towards the center of the system. So a big focus is going to be, let's get in there and keep drilling, offsetting on this new discovery at the main resource area. But as Scott mentioned, we've got 16 other targets, a few of which have stronger surface signatures than the resource area in terms of alteration and surface sampling. So we're going to want to get a few holes into those targets as well. We don't know yet, are those a connection to the Allard resource that we already have, or are those separate centers? I mean, one of the things we talk about in the exploration business is porphyries don't usually tend to occur in isolation. There's often clusters of these centers. And so the opportunity on this is, as the one figure showed, this is one small section of a 10 square kilometer alteration footprint at La Plata. So exciting times, I think, for these upcoming programs. And the team is at work right now working on, what that optimal program is going to look like.
Got anything to add to that? Or I can jump into another one and maybe you can field this one. So we'll do it in two parts, I guess. So with respect to hole 4, can that hole be picked up at depth to test that extension? And then I'm not sure to what extent you can pontificate on as geologists. Do you have any sense of what that continuity, that extension might look like in terms of the ultimate width of that hole? What might have been?
Well, I think the latter part of your question there, it really is difficult to say how much more mineralization there might be. It is unfortunate that hole ended in such beautiful, really exciting grade. And, these things happen sometime in the business, but the intent would be to come back and drill around that hole and to make sure that we get some depth into these holes to get through, hopefully get through the mineralization at some level. And it is hard to say, but it does seem like the grade was increasing down to the bottom of the hole. So we'd hope that we see a significant amount of similar mineralization coming out of the bottom of that with additional drilling.
Yeah, and maybe just point out the original target depth we were going for was 1,000 to 1,200 meters, but we had some mechanical issues with the drill. So, we'll be looking certainly to target to that depth. And many similar projects in South America right now drilling even much deeper holes than that. So the technology is there to drill these. Sometimes with deeper holes, you can start with a hole and then you can wedge off of that as well. That can help your drilling efficiency. So we'll be looking at opportunities to utilize that type of approach. But this system appears to be quite vertical. So we're really just starting to get into the guts of it. So it's already vertical extent over 1.5 kilometers, about 1 kilometer of strike, 400 meters width was the 2022 resource. So we've expanded that. So it's really quite open, and for context, 1 billion pound resource porphyry is pretty small porphyry in the world of porphyries. So the opportunity that we could see this grow significantly over future campaigns is quite good.
Just circling back to both the 2022 holes, Scott, you mentioned that it's expected to increase the scale. Obviously, what about the grade of the resource?
I think that is a significant thing that we hit on briefly in the presentation, and that is that all of the historic holes, or the majority of the historic holes, did not test for gold, silver, or platinum group element results. And so there's this opportunity, obviously, as a copper equivalent result in 2204. It's one of the highest grade holes we've seen in the district. And it does have these enhanced zones that run up to 0.75% copper, up to 1% copper, that are over 50 to 100 meters higher up the hole. And the grade at the bottom of the hole with these zones up to, you can just, however you want to divide it up, is really significant. And a lot of the contribution of the gold and PGE minerals is important to that, but that's what represents the upside in the Allard resource, where none of that stuff was sampled historically.
Yeah, so I think just adding to that, so we've got our existing resource. Our newer holes have the precious metals, so we've now got more holes in the resource that have that. Our resampling in the underground tunnel, our resampling of some of the historic holes is all building on that. And over time, you're going to see more and more of that gold plus precious metal component, come into this. And because the grade is significantly higher, both in the copper and the precious metals in hole 4, we would expect the grade of the resource to go up, because we've now drilled an area that was basically an estimate, but now it's drilled. So that should go up, and it's a bigger area because of that step out expansion away from the last hole. So it should be a combination, and with a substantial follow-up program, especially with a completely wide open, as Scott's map showed, to the north and east, and with several quite spectacular historic holes. One of the holes was over 200 meters at about 0.5% copper, no precious metal assays, and wide open, ending in mineralization. So that's the kind of hole you want to go in and do an offset hole on a hole like that as well. So lots of opportunities here that we're pretty excited about.
Perfect spot to jump off on. And just a reminder, when we're doing any of the resampling and assaying for the other metals, we'll definitely be talking about that and let people know in advance, whether that's in a news release or just in subsequent webinars and so on like that. However, what quarter or roughly when is 2023 drilling expected to start at La Plata? And there's a second question about any thoughts on how many drill holes planned for, say, the next 12 and 24 months?
Maybe we could just talk about the permit. So the new permit is in place. It allows us to drill up to 25 holes. So, that is on the Forest Service ground. We're able to drill more holes than that on the private holdings that we have. So those are patented claims where we own the surface and the subsurface. So, we're anticipating a pretty substantial program. We've got to do that work to lay it out in terms of, where we're going, but there's some very obvious holes that we want to get started on, and we could be started drilling as early as spring time, kind of late spring. So right now the team's hard at work laying out kind of the optimal program, both in terms of expansion drilling with the main resource and other targets.
Okay, great. And switching gears, just do a total right turn here. Is it expected that you two will be on the Discovery Channel Gold Rush show?
Well, our property will be the show that Parker is mining on. So moving from downstream on Dominion Creek to our property, it's going to be the metallic minerals property. And so we'll see how things unfold, but it's certainly, we're going to get some exposure in terms of the landowner there. And Parker's a great guy, and we're looking forward to interacting with him. And it's pretty exciting to see that visibility for what he's going to be doing. Keep in mind, folks, it's a drama, so they're highlighting the drama part, but he's a solid operator. I think last year they produced something like $20 million worth of gold downstream. And his ambition is to grow his operations, and he's got a large block of unmined ground with metallic minerals. So we're rooting for him, and we're excited to have those guys in and operating.
Another good jumping off point, because there's a bit of a math question here that I had to kind of retool. So I'll just read it the way that I was adjusting the question. So is my math correct that if Parker produces 10,000 ounces and gold is 1,800, that's 18 million US, and MMG would get at least 10% of that, meaning 1.8 million US dollars?
Yeah, those are the rough numbers. So our royalty does vary depending on, there's 3 blocks to the property. So it varies on each of those, but it's between 10 and 15% to metallic. And they mined $20 million worth of gold last year. Now this is year 1 startup. So, it's going to take some time. We'll see where he gets to, but I know, he's expecting to apply the same methodology, same approach. And because we already have drilling on the property, he's expanding that with the 400 drill program. So, I think his objective is to get in there and keep moving in the same pace he's been moving, downstream, but let's let it unfold. We're already off to a great start by having him in there and with such an ambitious drill program, and with one area that's already prepped for mining for them to get started in.
Scott, so just a couple of clarification questions about the IRR you mentioned for Keno. I'm afraid I'm not 100% sure, but that was you were mentioning the percent IRR.
Well, there is, it is on the slide there. You know, basically it says that, and this was from, I think, the last update from Alexco prior to the takeover by Hecla, but a very robust IRR project for mining in the Keno Hill district, using that mill at a rate of around 400 tons a day. So it's a very small operation, but it's extremely high grade. You know, this is one of the highest silver grade districts in the world, at over typically 1,000 gram per ton combined metal equivalent grade. So this is a thing that I think you know, really is attractive to a number of people. High grade is always really good to have, and that's what we're sort of searching, but we're also finding other sort of forms of mineralization that are lower grade, that are potentially bulk mineable as sheeted veins in more modest grade, but broader zones. And so there's a number of things that we can do, but I think it is important to ask that question, because the Keno project really is important to metallic. We've got these exciting results at La Plata, but Keno Hill is still a very significant key asset for metallic.
Yeah,
I think the existing mill as well.
Yeah, I might just add to Scott's comments there. So that feasibility that Alexco did was the addition of the two new mines. So basically adding Birmingham and Flame and Moth, basically with very modest capital, showed the rate of return that Alexco was seeing, and now Hecla. So by analogy, if we could add, you know, similar scale deposits on metallics ground, that's the kind of rate of return you could see by adding those new deposits, and it's pretty significant. So though they're modest in footprint, and though the mill isn't a huge mill because the grades are so high, those additions can be quite, you know, significant. And at 4 to 5 million ounces of silver per year, that's a top 15 silver mine. As Scott said earlier, it's the highest grade in their portfolio. My guess is they're going to try to grow that production to make it one of the bigger producers as well, maybe on par with Greens Creek. So yeah, it's great to have them in the neighborhood. I think this is a huge development for the Keno district, and you know, the potential to add deposits where you don't need to build the mill, but you've got the mine, are significant. And in these bulk tonnage discoveries, if those are big enough, you'll look at ways to develop even a standalone to process that. And you know, the big deposits, bulk tonnage deposits, say in Mexico, the giant one being Newmont's Penasquito deposit, you know, that's a little under 1 ounce per ton or 30 gram per ton is ore grade. So if you can get the economy of scale, all of a sudden you can be looking at massive levels of production from that type of system. And so that's what's exciting with those new discoveries on the east part of the Keno district.
Okay, and maybe just one thing that we seem to take for granted, or tend to take for granted, I should say, is just the use of equivalents. And in particular, we used copper equivalent, which is being mentioned here in the question. So maybe just a few words on the use of copper equivalent and potentially expected recoveries. I know you can't say specifically, but just general terms in a porphyry system like La Plata.
Yeah, so maybe just a couple quick comments. So when we use copper equivalent, or if we use silver equivalent at Keno, we are already, we're taking the value of the main metal and we're adding those credit values, and we apply a recovery factor that already uses the recovery of nearby operations. So at Keno, we use the recovery from the feasibility at Keno Hill. At La Plata, we're looking at other porphyry regions, other deposits in the porphyry of similar style porphyry systems. So we're applying a factor that you're adding that value for those other metals, but we're also downgrading it to report, you know, an estimated recovery component. So when you think about it, you know, that drill hole drills through that block of mineralization. It contains at La Plata copper and silver and gold and PGMs, and all of that would be mined at one point and crushed and ground. And the process that's used in these type of deposits is called sulfide flotation. So they make it to a very fine powder. They put it into a vat, they stir that material, and they're able to separate the metal from the inert rock material to create a concentrate. And so the ultimate recovery is going to be how much of the copper do you get, and then those other metals that occur with that. And right now, based on other geologic systems, at Keno, we know the silver goes along with the lead and the zinc in the concentrate. And in most porphyry systems, the copper is your main metal of focus, and the precious metals come along with that at varying degrees of recovery on those. But you're mining it all at the same time, you're crushing it, floating it, and recovering it all at the same time. And so the equivalent number is a nice way to look at it in terms of a mix of metals. It's a great way to compare project to project. But you can always look at the individual metals to kind of tell what, size component are each of those metals contributing.
Right, just coming down to the last couple of questions here. So the term beachhead was used that the Hecla CEO described their Yukon position in. We saw them make a offer at our friends at ATAC or ATAC, depending on your pronunciation. How's the relationship, and just any further thoughts on Hecla in the neighborhood and in Yukon?
Go ahead, Scott.
Well, I was just going to say, I think, relationships are good with Hecla. We've got a lot of similarities and previous histories with extensive amounts of staff within Hecla, and have had the opportunity to have dinner with their vice president of exploration and met with their CEO, and, personal relationships with other members of their staff. And they know who we are. They know what we're doing. And they're going to be interested in following along and taking advantage of any opportunities that come up that way. So I think the relationships are good. It's obvious now with the ATAC, the bid for ATAC, that their interest in the Yukon has been demonstrated. That really bolsters this confidence that they have in the jurisdiction and their ability to do work in the Yukon. And I think it really bodes well that a company like Hecla, with their reputation and their skill set, is essentially trying to double down in the district. And that bodes well for metallic too.
There are just a couple left, and we'll round those out. I see everyone is still hanging on. So question about cash position, and will the company plan to raise money soon?
Yeah, so I mentioned we are in discussions with warrant holders right now about potential acceleration of warrants. We're in pretty good shape right now, certainly for planning and initiating a start of our programs with our current holdings of about $2.5 million. We'll be looking at our options. We'll be talking with groups such as Canaccord that have been strong supporters in the past, and looking for market opportunities as appropriate to raise additional capital. It's nice to have the money coming in from the royalties as well. We've already received or will be receiving soon an advance royalty on that. So we're in pretty good shape. We're pleased to see the response in the market. We're pleased to see that perhaps this 2-year consolidation is wrapping up, and that the market's starting to pay attention to high quality exploration development stage companies like Metallic, and that'll be helpful in terms of raising capital in the future.
Okay, it's still a couple more new ones came in here. So just quickly, someone new to the investing in the exploration and resource sector, understands resources need to be accurately delineated and so forth. Question, do we have enough information to establish a profitable mine? Short answer, no. But maybe just a couple of words, Greg or Scott, on the progression from resource to PEA to pre-fees, fees, and so on. Yeah,
so we don't, in the industry, we use the Canadian 43-101 guidelines in terms of how to put a resource out. We use third-party engineering firms along with our geologic team to basically put together the models and review those and vet them. So in the early days, you're drilling holes, and once you get enough holes that are showing potentially mineable widths and grades, that hold together in a three-dimensional configuration, you can start to put together something that could be an inferred resource. Definition of inferred is geologically reasonable. So your qualified person who has experience in this looks at it and says, yeah, that looks reasonable. This is how you might mine it. And so those factors get applied. So our first resource here at La Plata is inferred. As you do infill drilling, as you start to really refine your understanding, that can move towards what's called a measured and indicated category. This is a higher degree of confidence. And when you complete a feasibility study, measured and indicated resources become proven and probable reserves. So in the resource, it's all about building confidence, and that tends to happen over time. Right now, we're at the stage where we're growing this largely as an inferred resource. And with further work, you'll eventually starting to upgrade this to measured and indicated. And then as you start to apply economics with an initial PEA, preliminary economic assessment, your confidence level in both the resource and the economics around extraction increase. And you typically see a higher kind of enterprise value per ounce or price to NAV as you move from resource, preliminary economic assessment, pre-feasibility, and feasibility. Of course, with a feasibility being the stage in which investors or banks would lend money to build a project. So a very high degree of confidence. So Metallic is at the early start of that. We actually see that as the opportunity here because the market is not that efficient at this early stage. There's not a lot of analysts that follow the exploration development stage companies. But for investors, it's kind of a sweet spot to get in early and to be able to ride that increase in value that will come from growth of the resource because it's wide open. It will grow over time. And then that de-risking and revaluation component. If investors have further questions on this, happy to get on a call at any time and walk through this in more detail. If you want to reach out to us, we can set up a call with the team and walk through the particulars. But for example, I'll just end on this. We have 58 drill holes and 16,900 meters of drilling between the Rio Tinto, Phelps Dodge, metallic resampling, and metallic new drill holes and underground sampling. So this, even though it's an inferred resource, is a well-defined resource with a high number of drill holes in those pierce points. So there's a lot of confidence in where we are as a starting point, and we'll be building on that resource as we go forward. And with more modern new holes throughout the resource, those opportunities to bring in the additional precious metal credits and things will accrue.
Okay, last one, and basically it's just a congratulations on a fantastic hit. The market really seems to like it. So that's a nice way to wrap things up. But I would also just maybe add to that. It might be worth commenting on the market activity that we've seen. We've had a nice move in the stock. We've had excellent volume. We're back to what might be a more reasonable baseline. But just any thoughts on the legs and on the move and the market activity, Greg or Scott?
Yeah, well, maybe I'll just make a couple of comments, and maybe Scott can wrap up as well. As mentioned earlier, the sector has gone through, particularly silver-focused companies and to some degree the copper, early-stage copper companies have gone through a pretty significant consolidation over the last 2 years. The market cycle peak midterm certainly was back in 2020. So we're seeing that kind of settle down. The venture index, which is a great barometer, has held its lows and it's making higher highs and higher lows. We've seen the mid-tier mining companies, as seen in, say, the SILJ and the SIL ETFs, or the GDXJ and GDX ETFs. So these are mid-cap and larger explorer developers or producers already starting to move upwards. So, it looks like this consolidation phase, we're putting it behind us. The response to our news and other companies that have put out significant news in the sector recently is constructive. And I think that we're looking at the beginnings of what could be a very significant commodity bull market, on par, we believe, with the potential of the last cycle, which ran for over 10 years. This low has taken longer. Instead of couple of years to consolidate, it's been more like 5 years of consolidation. So perhaps if symmetry plays a role here, this could be a longer and stronger cycle than the last one. But, in terms of the metals that the world needs, both for transition to low carbon energy, as well as onshoring of production and for critical minerals, our industry has not been making discoveries at the same level as past decades. Reserves and resources in all categories of metal are much lower than they were in past decades. And so really the industry to grow needs to make new discoveries and grow those. And many of the largest producers are out there saying that they don't see where the metal is going to come from. So that's very bullish from a fundamental industry supply side point of view, that there's significant constraints and that, that paints a very bullish picture for pricing for metals and by derivative of pricing of metals, the pricing of companies that own significant assets at the earlier stage.
And just take us out, Scott. I guess we have more results expected from Keno, and we see the ability to add further value from here.
We've definitely got a few catalysts coming out, including new results at Keno and our resource expansion at La Plata and a inaugural resource at Keno within the year. But, it's such a great time to be a metallic shareholder. We're so well positioned with the 3 projects that we've got and a potential royalty income stream to help us. We really are in a great spot, and just to be able to have the ability to grow these resources as we go forward is going to be a heck of a lot of fun for all of us involved.
I'll second that.
Yeah, me too. Gentlemen, I think with that, we can wrap it up. I will remind everyone that the team will be heading to the Prospectors and Developers Association Convention, which is one of the largest mining and exploration events of the year around the world. I think this is my 13th, although I've lost track, 12th or 13th, and by far the busiest and most exciting lineup of meetings and everything else that we have. So Scott has a presentation there. We have a booth. Drop by if you're in Toronto. Please come see us in person. We also have CuEq, any number of meetings on and off campus while we're there. So watch for that. Watch for further news. Follow us on Twitter, MMG Silver, and sign up on the website for further updates. Reach out to us anytime.